Hello and welcome to my video. My name is Mark Parham. I'm an entrepreneur and property investor, and in this video I'm using some footage from 2019, before COVID hit, before I even knew that COVID existed or that a lockdown was a thing. So these are happier times for me, and I thought I would do my 200 subscriber special looking back at happier times. Now please watch this through to the end. I make an offer at the end. You can have a one-to-one conversation with me, and I'd love to talk to as many of you who want to speak to me as possible. But yeah, these are my thoughts on property investing in happier times back in 2019. And thank you to everybody who subscribed. I appreciate every single one of you. So property investing from the beach. So today I've been on the phone to Scott over at Legacy, just asking him to find me another house because I had a notification from my mortgage broker just informing me that one of the remortgages has gone through and that the solicitor's been informed. So within 7 to 14 days, I think they said, I'll have the funds for another property. And that's pretty exciting. So yeah, I mean, even when you're away from it all, and as you can see, I mean, it's a beautiful day today. Really, really nice. I've got the same bit of private beach again, which I've been really enjoying. And we're going to get to do a bit of investing while we're here. So I'm sure that Scott will be straight on it. He'll find me some options, and I'll be able to secure something in the next couple of weeks whilst I'm away. So I thought I'd do a video about how I got into property, and having spoken to quite a few investors in the last couple of years, it's not dissimilar to a lot of people. I bought my first house in 2010, January of 2010, to live in London, and at the time everybody was telling us this is an awful time to buy. I remember it, and it was hard to buy. We bought a bank repossession, so somebody couldn't pay their mortgage, the bank had taken it off them, and we paid $176,000, I remember, for this property, which was up for 190 something thousand. Nobody was buying. Money was really hard to come by, so getting the mortgage was actually the hardest thing. And looking back, it seems ridiculous that money was so hard to come by. But it was really hard to get the finance. And we bought this property. Everybody was saying it's a terrible time. In hindsight, it was the very bottom of the market. And today we look like geniuses, but we weren't. We were literally just trying to buy our first house to live in as a young married couple who was looking there for their first property. We moved in 2016. And we had decided that we were going to move down to Oxfordshire. My dad at the time was quite ill. Unfortunately, he's passed away now, but at the time he was quite ill. And we wanted to make sure that he got to see my son, who was at the time just born, every day or as often as possible. At the same time, I was also doing buying into a business with one of my best friends from school. So it kind of all just transpired that that would be what we would do. And we were fortunate enough to be able to buy our second property without selling our first. And a friend of mine who was very wealthy in London had said to me, look, when you move, always keep this house, you'll always be wealthy. Because this property will go up. And in 2009, 2010, when everybody else was selling, he was buying. And I remember saying to him, aren't you worried that the property's price is going to... He's like, just don't follow the masses. If everybody's selling, if everybody's worried, that's the time to be brave. And that guy today probably made about 50 million. Or close to. I was speaking to him, very close to 50 million during that period, because everybody else was scared and he was just buying it all up and then renting it back to the same people that were selling the properties. They were selling their houses because they couldn't afford the mortgage repayments. He was buying them and renting them back to them. So my first bit of advice to anyone going into property would be just buy. Just get started. The sooner you start buying, the sooner you can allow the capital to start appreciating. I actually think that now is a better time than when we bought in 2010, not necessarily because prices are cheaper, but because mortgage rates are so low and, yields are so high. I'm achieving 30% in year one, which is just incredible, really. 30% ROI in year one. And I'll put the links in the description for this video, but you can tap into my team. You can contact Legacy, you can contact Scott who manages Legacy, and he'll talk you through it. It's not expensive to get started. I think a lot of people think it's massively out of reach, but it's just not. If you ever have bought a property, you've probably got money tied up in that property that you could put to use to buy cash flow. So the way I see things now, when I first bought my property, my one in London, I wanted to own the property outright. I wanted no mortgage on it. I wouldn't hear that it wasn't a sensible thing to do, to own it fully. What I didn't realise at the time is you always own it fully. You always own it. You don't own any less of the property because you have a mortgage on it. You own all of the property. If the property doubles or trebles in value, I get all of that appreciation. The bank got none of it. When I rent it out, I get all the rent. The bank doesn't get any of it. All a mortgage is a loan secured on the value of a property. Mortgages are the cheapest type of borrowing you can do, bar none. I've just remortgaged my property in London and it's at 1.9% on a 5-year fixed. That is insane. Oh no, it's not 1.9. It was 1.9. It's now 2.2. 2.2. It's still nothing. 2.2 5-year fixed. I'm not intending on remortgaging that again for another 5 years. It's the cheapest borrowing you can do. So as long as you can always make sure that your rent is significantly higher than your mortgage and your bills, then there's no reason you wouldn't want to control assets that are worth significantly more. I can't think of a good reason, unless you believe, honestly, that there's going to be a huge market crash and that all of this wealth is going to be wiped out. And bear in mind, when that last happened in 2009, 2010, it was back to its peak levels within 5 years and it only crashed 25%, and that was the biggest crash in living memory. 25%. Generally speaking, I'm insulated at a minimum of 30% now, but when I was starting, 25% was where I was insulated to. Lending criteria is so strict nowadays that we're almost protected against that sort of risk. And money's so cheap. We're not looking at mortgage rates of anywhere near, 5, 6, 7, 8%. It's 2. So, number one, I just don't see a crash coming. I think property's now more affordable than it was back then, just because the interest rates are so low. So I don't personally see a crash coming. I'm not giving you any financial advice, but I'm just speaking from my personal perspective of my portfolio. And I don't understand why anybody wouldn't want to control a larger asset with debt on it, as long as the debt's serviced by someone else. I can't see why that would be a problem. But back then, I would have viewed that as really risky. And I guess that's my point, is that I've matured as an investor. I've taken on board everything that people have said to me, and I've looked at who's doing well, and everybody I know who's got money, who's wealthy, and I'm not talking about the doctor that earns 80 grand a year and works 60 hours a week. That is not wealthy. That's not wealthy. you know, my personal journey, then 2015, so back to that, 2015, moved down to Oxfordshire, and then we stayed there for a couple of years. I was working really hard on my business with some other directors, and we grew a company. We grew it really well, and I got myself into a position where I remortgaged my first London house, and we received 130,000, I think it was, out of that, and we bought our, so it had almost doubled at that point in, I think, just over 6 years. Almost doubled in 6 years. And it was an insane amount of money to receive at the time, tax-free, because it's just a loan, right? It's not taxable income, it's just a bank lending you more money. And interestingly, the mortgage payment, I think, stayed about the same because interest rates had gone down so low. Or I'd fixed at a higher rate before because it was the first time. I can't remember, but either way, it was definitely. I was like, what? I'm now paying about the same, and I get more money. I can't believe that this is true, but it was. And you know, we took that money and we bought a property local to where we were living, and we rented that out for £3,150 a month on the HMO model, with a mortgage I think of 400 and bills of about 600. We make about 2,300, 2,400 a month on that. And I thought, this is amazing. I'm receiving an average UK salary and doing virtually nothing. And to make it even better, I knew in 2 years, maybe 3, I'd get all of my money back out and be able to do it again. But I couldn't wait that long, so I just put as much money to one side as possible. I was earning fairly well. I was working long hours, and we had this rent coming in as well, which was an extra £2,500 a month. So we put all that money to one side, and before you knew it, we had 30,000, and we was able to go again. Even if we'd just saved the rent, which was a new income, and lived as we were before, we'd have had 30,000 within a year. So we went again and we bought a property. This one was up in Sheffield, and that one's really good. I mean, we paid £100,000 for it. It rents out £1,500 a month, and we receive profit of about £950 a month, something like that. And ultimately, the biggest chunks of money I've made have not been from the rent or the cash flow. Ultimately, it's been in the capital appreciation. And those have been the bits that have allowed me to, and the renovation, you know, buying it low, renovating it, refinancing it, you know, being in a position where I don't have to buy a house, I can choose, I can pick and choose. Ultimately, the biggest strengths, and the biggest bits have been buying sensible, making sure that they cash flow well. And you know, capital appreciation isn't guaranteed, whereas the rental income, you know, you can pretty much make sure that you're going to get that from day one. So I would always say buy for cash flow, but ultimately I think it's been the capital appreciation that's made me the millions, whereas the cash flow's made me, you know, the 6-figure salary a year, which is good. Let me be clear, it's not bad. But the capital appreciation makes you a multi-millionaire. Well, those were certainly happier days, weren't they? And I wanted to post that as a throwback to 2019 and as a reminder that things will get back to normal, and we will go on holiday again, and we will get all those experiences that we're missing out on at the moment. So look, if you've enjoyed that video, I hope you have, please subscribe. My name's Mark Parham. This has been my YouTube channel, and until I get to 1,000 subscribers, you can always book a one-to-one consultation with me. And whether you want to talk about investing, mental health, or anything, I'm here to talk to you. So please have a look on my website. The link is in the description. You can book a quick conversation with me, and I'll be more than happy to speak to you. But better times are coming, and 2021 is going to be a much better year. So I'll see you next week. This was an additional video, so I'll still be posting on Monday. But thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you on Monday.